there's a fine balance between, particularly when you're running a business, between worrying about shit and also realizing that you can't control everything.
See, I was the opposite way when I ran the business. So I was very much like 1,000,001 miles an hour, loads of ideas. I had an unbelievable first employee, a woman called Steph, who stuck with me for over 5 years. And she was so detail orientated that I just knew I didn't have to think about the detail.
Yeah.
And often we'd come out of pictures and she'd be like, you just said we can do that. And I was like, yeah, we can. She was like, brilliant. I'll go away and spend the next week researching how to make it happen. Yeah. And I was like, but I know you will.
Sell it and then worry about how to deliver it after.
Exactly. And I was like, this is the joy of our space. People aren't doing this yet. So let's be the first.
100%.
Let's lead by example. Let's get that case study in. And she always did. Like, she never, ever dropped a ball. And so for me, I very much went into like, I can just do the kind of big thinking, and I know, and I can sleep at night that the detail
being taken care of.
It's all being taken care of.
Yeah. We're really lucky we're in that spot now. And I think that's been it's allowed me the room to then do the big picture thinking. I think like it's very, very difficult to be able to work on your business when you're working in it. And I think up until this point, I've been really in the weeds of like, even to the point of like, I used to still write client content not too long ago.
Stop it.
Which is wild. Yeah. Like literally, like I was like, no, that needs to be different, because I understand like that's my area of expertise. Like the personal branding strategy and like execution is like that's what the business is built on, right? Like it literally started out as a ghostwriting agency pretty much for LinkedIn, but also like I've got other things I should be worrying about.
Yeah, and that's the joy of running it, right? There is always 1,000,001 things that you can do, and it was the biggest switch for me was exactly that. How do I take my mentality to work on the business versus in the business? And I felt like as soon as I managed to kind of get to that point, and I don't think I ever fully nailed it, but the team were happier because I was out their way, I was letting them do their thing, I was giving them room to grow, and subsequently I could then focus on like, what markets are we launching in, what disciplines do we need next, what's the next big client that we're going to go and win, versus really worrying about like, no, and which influencers are we going to put in, and can I look at the CPMs of their last 30 days, and then I can tell you whether they'll drive the performance they need. And it undermines people, right?
Yeah, bottlenecks everything as well. And I think the room to grow piece is really important. Like that's taken me a very long time to learn that, of like, you can't do everything. And actually you need to be doing the things you're really fucking good at. Best players in the best seats, and you're not the best seat to be copywriting. Or like looking at like the impressions that influencers have had over the last 6 months.
But you only learn this the hard way.
I know, and it is a hard lesson. Right?
There's so many hard lessons running a business.
Oh my god, it humbles you so hard, doesn't it? You go into business being like, oh, I can start a business because I'm so good at this thing, and it's like, actually you're average.
And you have a great day, and then the next day you're like,
tragic,
this is going to be brilliant because yesterday XYZ happened, and then you're like, oh, I just hate that thump in the stomach, thank you.
Yeah, I know. And you need to actually, I've learned this, like it used to be high low all the time. It's fucking exhausting. I think I don't ever go too high or ever go too low now. It's just like even keeled.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And again, going back to what I was saying about being laissez-faire about stuff, I think it's because I know this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Not everything's urgent. And actually, you need to focus on the things that you need to focus on right now, and you can't do everything in a day.
Yeah, exactly.
So 6 weeks in, profitable, like amazing. Most businesses it takes like 2 years or something to make profit, which is fucking wild. We were the same. We were profitable from day one. And I think that's the beauty of a service-based business, right? It's like as long as you win a client, like you're in profit.
Yeah.
What happens next? Like you hire your first person, you said they're with you for 5 years. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So Steph was with us for 5 years. We had the worst office on earth. We had no windows, no aircon.
Sorry. Wait. You had no windows.
We had no windows.
Was it a prison?
It was essentially a prison.
Oh my God. What? Why?
Because it was just we were so tiny. We just took the smallest space possible on the top floor of the T building. Yeah. But we grew, and every year we were within the same building, but like we were moving into bigger spaces. And I always say winning breeds winning. And we were the momentum was high. So, and the clients we were winning were clients that I believed in, that the team believed in. Like, Steph probably never knew this, but she was the only person applied to be an account exec at Connects, because no one knew who we were. No one knew who I was. We didn't really have any clients to be able to talk about. And then I lecture a lot at universities. She'd seen me lecture, got in touch for the job. And obviously hired her as quickly as I possibly could.
Before she realised.
Yeah, I needed some resource. And she, yeah, as I say, she was exceptional. And I think the success of a business is always down to the employees.
100%.
And the team that you build and the team that you invest in. And yeah, I got lucky, right? I hired the only person that applied who happened to be the best person I possibly could have hired.
She was probably the best person there because she was so bought into you. It sounds like she bought into you while you were lecturing.
Yeah. And we've like stayed in touch now. So I've known her, whatever it is, 8-9 years. I speak to her probably every day in some capacity somehow. And I'm like now her biggest like cheerleader and mentor from like a work perspective, but she's a really good mate too.
Yeah.
And she knew how the business worked. She believed in the business, and you can't pay any salary on earth for someone to believe in the business as much as you do.
I think that's a really important thing from both sides of the fence. Like in my experience, like we haven't taken investment yet. I don't know if we will or we won't, but one of the things that I talk to a lot when we have friends who are VCs or who do private equity deals, it's all about the founder. It's all about, you know, the ideas, whatever, but they need to know that the founder can execute it. And I think it's the same for employees. I think they need to buy into you because every agency has a job that's similar to people that we would hire, or similar to people that you would hire when you were running Scene. But I think you don't need someone to do a job. You need someone to help you figure it out. Yeah. And so there needs to be a buy-in from an emotional level about them feeling like that you can take them to the moon, but there will be oxygen there. Yeah. Because if they don't, then it is just like a plug in, plug out.
Exactly. And she was well looked after because she looked after me. She looked after the business. She looked after the team as we grew. She looked after the clients. And subsequently, again, when you're small, you don't have to go through the formal HR process of
you can
pay rises and benefits and all of that stuff. You can just be like, right, you're worth your weight in gold. I need you to stick here. Yeah. And she was indispensable to me. And subsequently, you know, she had those conversations earlier on about moving elsewhere. Her salary wouldn't have matched other industries or other businesses that she could have looked at. And I do think it worked for both parties for that 5 years until we got really big.
How important do you think those first hires are?
It's crucial. When we were always going through fast growth for the first 5 years. And every time, as I said, like winning breeds winning. Every time we'd win something new and we'd need new people, we then won something else and we needed more people. And I spent 20-25% of my time just meeting people. It wouldn't necessarily be with a job in mind, but I was like, if you're being talked about, if you're good, if you're, you know, your name keeps reappearing or cropping up in some capacity, I just want to have a conversation and I want to have a chat. And some of the best hires that I made were people that were not, you know, through a recruiter or jobs live on LinkedIn. It was people I just got recommended, got introduced to, and subsequently was like, how quickly can I hire you? And those people always paid for themselves. And I remember I'd hired quite a junior team to start with because essentially influence marketing hadn't been around for ages.
But also young business, right? Like you never have the cash to be able to invest in chunky people at the start.
I remember my first employee put them on 45K, and my conversation with finance was like, what? And I was like, they're going to be negotiating with influencers and celebrities. They can pay for themselves literally in a month. So actually we get 3 months. They didn't have a job at the time because one of the businesses had gone through a round of redundancies. And I was like, let's give it a go. They're not leaving a job. It's 45K, which felt like millions at the time based on the size that we were, and came in and within 2 months had saved 45K on influencer and celebrity fees from being unbelievably talented from a negotiation perspective, which was a skill I didn't have in my junior team who were all leaving school or university and being trained up by us. And as we got bigger, you couldn't hire juniors and train them and invest that time. You needed people that were more senior, that had been around the block, that could also then invest and train the team because my time needed to then be growth and accelerating the business further.
Did you instinctively know that, or did you learn that?
I learned everything on the go. Yeah. It's just one of those things of like, the longer you are in the business, the longer you were doing it, the more you started to work out who is right for the business, who is right from a value perspective, what do we need, how am I going to speak to these investors and make sure that they know I am making the right decision, smart investment. And again, it helps when you've been profitable every single month that you've been trading, because it shows you're doing something right.
Yeah. Do you think if you were going to do it again, you would take investment?
That's a brilliant question. So the way my investment structure worked was very much a incubator, find talent who are really passionate about a subject matter, and they take away essentially the shared resource, HR, finance. So I never had to think about my month end. It was submitted to me. I didn't have to think about keeping company's house up and running. So essentially I could do what I was good at and focus there. And as the business really grew, we were exceeding the performance of the other agencies that have been within the group, some of them for like 20 odd years. And we had a really brilliant conversation, which is like, what happens next? So I own 40% of the business, they own 60% of the business. And we went to go through a private equity deal. And that's when the kind of wheels fell off slightly, because I also was trying to get the US up and running. I was also pregnant with my first kid, and it was just everything all at once. And this process lasted 18 months. And they say to you through that process, you will drop balls. And I was a bit arrogant. I was like, come on.
I'm Sedge.
Like, I was like, I work 24/7. I don't have anything to distract me. Like, it is fine. And actually, as it happens, I dropped every fucking ball. And I learned everything the hard way. And I just felt like all I was doing for really an 18-month process was picking up pieces and trying to kind of put plasters over things. And as it happens, by extending that process, they were trying to find the cracks in the business, and they were trying to find out what, may or may not go wrong as part of that investment. But I learned, I never knew really what an investor was before having an investor. I never really knew kind of, and again, he was very like laissez-faire, chilled out, lives in Nepal, wasn't involved day to day. It was essentially, if you make money, happy days. And if you're not, then you'll have some difficult conversations. And going through that process, I just learned so much more about investors, what they want, how it works. Even just the language is completely different. And I'm at a crossroads now of like working out what I do or don't do next. And I've always said now, like, I want to own 100% of my business. But actually, I'm also like, well, why do I want to own more than 40% of the business that I graft in 24/7 that necessarily other investors weren't putting in those hours or bringing in the scale to help the business to grow. But I really know what I would be looking for and what their role would be and how they would help that growth get from kind of A to B far quicker.